Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to see Cora Manuel from Mills College present on financial aid. Cora is the director of financial aid there and has over 20 years experience working with financial aid. So we're looking forward to what she has to say tonight. Our apologies for the late start and technology issues, but really grateful to have this new YouTube channel where we'll be able to put up a lot more information. At this time, I'm going to turn the time over to Cora for her presentation. If during the presentation you find that you have some other questions you would like to follow up with, you can email them to me and we will see if we have time at the end to answer them. My email is jwright, W-R-I-G-H-T @srvusd.net. Thanks again for coming, Cora. The floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I don't remember how many years I've been coming out to Doherty Valley, but I really appreciate it. I have been at Mills College since the beginning of time, March. And tonight we're going to go over financial aid and hopefully answer as many questions as we can. So let me go ahead and share my screen. As long as the host lets me share my screen.
Uh-oh.
So what you need to know about financial aid in about 17 screens or less. So tonight we're going to go over a few things. What is financial aid? We'll talk a little bit about the cost of attendance, all about the acronyms that the financial aid offices use, cost of attendance, COA, expected family contribution, the AFC, what is financial need, what kinds of financial aid is available, the categories, types, and where the funds come from, how you get the funding, any of the financial aid, talk a little bit about special circumstances, application errors on either the federal application or the state application, and talk about some other resources to help the families and the students. So what is financial aid exactly? Because not every family is able to write the full check for 4 years. So financial aid is there to help the families and the students help pay for those expenses at the colleges and universities. Cost of attendance, COA. Every campus, every college, every university has a different cost of attendance. It is made up of direct costs and indirect costs. The direct costs are what are actually charged to the student. So it would be the tuition and fees. If the student is living on campus, so it will be the room and meal plan charges, also known as board. The indirect costs can be if a student is living off campus at an apartment that is not owned by the college or university. Other indirect estimates are the books and supplies, because not all students have the same major, minor, same instructors. They may have different requirements for the books and different supplies. Transportation is always an estimate. We are not talking about buying a new Tesla. We're talking about taking BART or any public transportation and minor expenses such as gas. Miscellaneous personal expenses, we always put in the cost of attendance, because that is things like your toothbrush, toothpaste, and buying any sweatshirt from the college or university. So this is the current average tuition and fees only at various colleges around the country. So again, private tuition can average about $35,000. Public schools or out-of-state schools, their tuition can be $21,000. This is just an average. And public in state of California or in a home state, it's about $9,000 $9,600. So this is the average. This does not include room and board or any of the other indirect costs. So this is a sample of the different typical expenses that are available for the students and how the colleges, universities also determine cost of attendance. There are estimates of food costs, even if the student decides to live at home with a parent. And there's different costs for the student if they're living off campus. Again, housing with parents, they're not actually paying rent, but there is a cost, so it is included in the food. Above that, or off campus, again, for rent, utilities, transportation. The state of California took a survey, so this was an average of transportation for students commuting back and forth from home. If they're on campus, they're not necessarily taking public transportation or using their car to go back and forth. And off campus, again, maybe a little bit closer than home. Personal miscellaneous, again, that's for the toothbrush, toothpaste, sweatshirt, and if you're tired of cafeteria food, maybe a hamburger or pizza every now and then. The expected family contribution, EFC, you will hear this a lot. This is the results from either the federal application or the state application or the CSS profile, which we will discuss a little later in this presentation. So the EFC is determined by the income and assets as reported on those applications. Again, it is a measurement in time of what, in theory, the government says the family can contribute to the student's expenses. And this is on an annual basis. And then financial needs. So we take the cost of attendance to COA. Again, every college campus, if it's UCLA, UC San Diego, they will be different. Subtract the expected family contribution, which will be the same based off of either the federal application or the California DREAM Act. And then we come up with the number, this financial need. So the financial need number is what the colleges, universities look to fill with as much need-based aid. We'll discuss that later, what that really means. Scholarships and grants, work study, subsidized loans. You'll hear this as well too, the different categories of financial aid, need-based or non-need-based aid, or otherwise known as merit-based. So the need-based, again, looks at the federal application or the state application to award different types of financial aid. The non-need-based aid, again, is usually called merit-based scholarships or grants, and that could be based on the strength of the admission application, looking at GPA, the grade point average of the student, depending if these schools are still using the test scores, they can also look at that, or it can be, again, based on addition or tryout. Athletic scholarships, again, those are tryouts. A lot of schools are in conversation with coaches now and signing those contracts. Other merit-based, again, maybe based on talent. Is it music? Is it a particular instrument? Are you a singer? Will you be participating in the choir? Is it a dance type of scholarship? There may be a tryout there. Or it could be based on math or science. So there may be interviews or, again, submitting your experiments, or again, having an interview with the various professors and deans at the colleges and universities that you have been admitted to. So the types of financial aid that's available is a self-help aid or gift aid. Now, gift aid can be scholarships and grants. It's gifted because you will not need to pay that back. That is free money. It can be, again, either need-based or it can be merit non-need-based. There are two four-letter words, and it's loan, which is definitely a part of the financial aid packages, and work study. So students may be offered a work study position, or some schools will make it mandatory that the students will need to work and earn funds to be put towards their tuition charges or room and board. So those will be the things that you may see on all of the financial aid award packages that you will be receiving from the schools that you have been admitted to. And then where do all these funds come from? The federal government is the largest source of financial aid. Most students will be completing the federal application and then will be determined if they're eligible for any federal grants, federal loans. There are different kinds of grants available from the federal government. So again, looking at the federal application. The college or university where your students are applying to, they also have different sources of funds, different pots of money. So they also may need different applications in addition to the federal application or the state application, the California Dream Act, or the CSS profile. So they may have a separate application for each different scholarship or grant that school will offer. The state of California has Cal Grants. The high school has already submitted the GPA to the California Student Aid Commission, and they will match that to either the federal application or the state application when it is completed, as long as those two things are submitted by March 2nd. That is the deadline for the Cal Grant. The California Student Aid Commission will start awarding or seeing if students are eligible for the state grants. Typically, they will start sending those email notifications out in January, but they will also be reviewing all the different FAFSAs, any corrections or state applications that come in that may make the student eligible. Private sources, there are a lot of scholarship application out there. They could be through what has been submitted or sent to your high school, to the counselors there, or it could be through different online search engines, which we will have some later on in this presentation. Looking at either any civic groups, different organizations and clubs that the student or the parents are members of, Coca-Cola, Target. So those are considered private sources, private scholarships and grants. Employers are listed because sometimes where the parents work, or even if the student is working, those jobs may also have other scholarship opportunities. So you may want to take a look and see if human resources or if there are any scholarship information posted or on the website. For example, at Mills College, if the parent has been working there for about a year, tuition is free. You may want to look. We do have openings. So these are the different applications that need to be submitted in order to have the schools offer financial aid. So the first one that the majority of all students should complete is the FAFSA. It's the free application for federal student aid. If you go to FAFSA.gov or studentaid.gov, you will be able to find that free application. The next application is the DREAM Act application, and that is only for students who do not have a Social Security number. The DREAM Act application is for students who are underdocumented or undocumented. They can use that application for state financial aid through the public schools. The private schools can also offer financial aid to students who use the DREAM Act application. But the FAFSA is the #1 application for students with a Social Security number, are citizens, are permanent resident aliens. So if you have a Social Security number student, you will complete the FAFSA. If you do not have a Social Security number, it will be the DREAM Act. And in a very small print to the side is just the paper version of the Cal Grant GPA verification form, which you do not need to worry about because high school has already submitted that information to the California Student Aid Commission. So you want to look at the websites of each college campus that your student is applying to, looking at the financial aid websites to see if there are earlier deadlines to submit these applications. Typically, again, March 2nd is the hard deadline for the Cal Grant and for most schools. But some schools do have a priority date to receive these applications. So for example, St. Mary's College of California in Moraga, they have a priority date to receive the applications of February 15. Cal State Sonoma used to have an earlier deadline of late January. So you will need to, again, go to every campus. Again, if it's the various UC schools, they may have different dates to provide these applications, as well as all the other schools, either in California or out of state schools. So please visit those websites and make sure that you submit these applications earlier rather than later so that you meet all of the deadlines. You can always go back and make corrections to either of these applications. There is another application that is required by about 250 schools across the country. This is not a free application. There is a fee to submit this application and then an additional fee for each institution or scholarship organization that is requesting this in addition to the federal application. A handful of California schools are the University of Southern California, Stanford, Occidental College. There's only about no more than 10 or 12 California schools that require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. So again, by visiting that school's website, you can see if they do require the CSS profile. And the CSS profile typically does have an earlier deadline than the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. And most of the time, it is required at the same time that the admission application is submitted as well. So I highly suggest that you submit either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application or the CSS profile earlier rather than later, and not wait to hear from the school if your student has been admitted to the college or university. So when we look at the various applications, there can be some common errors that we see all the time. Parents, if you are helping your student complete either application of the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, please remember that although it says you or your, use the student's social security number on the application. Unless, parent, you are deciding to go back to school, then you can use your own social security number on the application. But again, completing the application for the student, especially on the FAFSA, please make sure it is the same number that you see on the social security card or what was transmitted on the federal income tax returns. There are always a lot of questions about who reports as a parent, who reports the income and assets, their divorce situation, widowed situation, remarried parental information. When you are online with either of the applications, there are little help bubbles that you can click on to get the information or definitions. There are toll-free numbers to call either the U.S. Department of Education Federal Student Aid with questions on the FAFSA, and they're typically open Monday through Saturday They are on the East Coast, but they are open late to consider all of us on the West Coast. The California Student Aid Commission can also answer questions regarding the California DREAM Act application. Untaxed income, there are a lot of questions on the applications. What does it really mean? U.S. income taxes paid is not the amount of the check that you wrote to either the IRS or the state of California. It is the actual tax liability. Household size, who is in the house while the student is going to school, who the parents are providing more than 50% of support to that student, and those that are living in the home will be considered. How many are in the home, or how many will be going to college during that year? So again, it can vary from either one for the student, or could be more than that, depending if there are older brothers or sisters or younger brothers or sisters at the same time. Real estate and investment net worth, again, on the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, you will not provide the value of the primary home that you are living in. If you have rental property, that will need to be provided on the FAFSA and the DREAM Act application. You will not report any retirement accounts, IRAs, KEOs, 401s, 403s. Those are not reported. The contributions you make during the year from either your direct deposit from the payroll, from the tax, from your pay stub, that is what's considered untaxed income and will be reported. 529s, again, who is the owner of the account? The owner of the account, if it's the parent, then it will be the parent's asset. If a 529 is owned by someone outside of the home, grandparent, uncle, or aunt, that is not reported as an asset on the FAFSA. Once the student has received a disbursement or funds from those 529s, then it will be reported as untaxed income to the student. Again, that will be in future years. So when you look at both the FAFSA and the DREAM Act application, it will be asking for information from your 2019 federal income tax return. As we all know, 2019 will look very different from 2020 and may what happened in 2021. There are no spaces on the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application to discuss any special circumstances. There is a spot on the CSS profile where you can explain the situation and provide the information. So once you submit the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, you will then contact the financial aid offices of the schools your student is really interested in attending to provide information regarding the special circumstance or what is going on with the family's financial situation. You can also review their website to see if there is a specific form, a process. Is it just an email that you can send to the school? Every school will then contact you and ask for various supporting documentation. They may want to see the information from the 2019 federal income tax return, 2020. They may ask for the pay stubs, current pay stubs. If there was a, again, change in even jobs, again, that could be a difference in what is expected from the family to contribute to the costs for the student. If there's families, parents that are supporting grandparents that do not live in the same house, That is nowhere near being asked on the FAFSA or on the DREAM Act application. It is on the CSS profile, but again, these are just some examples of special circumstances that some schools can take into consideration. Again, all schools, colleges, and universities will look at everything differently because they have different sources of funds and they have regulations. And again, every school will be different. So you just need to contact each school's financial aid office, look on their website to see what types of things they can accept and review and consider, or just to go ahead and contact them and let them know what is going on with the family. So we have a few resources here. There is a free publication, Fund Your Future, that can be sent to your email, large PDF, and it talks a lot about the different financial aid, especially in California, but it also talks about federal financial aid, the different Cal grants offered by the state of California. There's also a middle class scholarship for students that are not eligible for Cal Grant, but families may have a higher income and will then be eligible to receive a middle class scholarship or grant only at the UCs or CSU campuses. Again, looking at the different websites for the schools and universities, the financial aid office websites, they will list all the different scholarships that are available to the student. If it requires a separate application, that's also maybe listed there. Again, talking to your high school counselor, Miss Wright, she has all that information. Looking at the studentaid.gov, that's the federal website where you can see the FAFSA, start the FAFSA, look at all the information, the different types of federal aid that's available, the different loans, if it's a loan in a student's name, if it's a loan in a parent's name, that is possible. csac.ca.gov is about the Cal Grant, again, or the California DREAM Act application. Finaid.org is another well-produced website for various information on all kinds of financial aid, and that discusses different loans, if it's a private loan through other organizations or lending institutions, it's discussed there. Fastweb.com and scholarships.com are two very large and reputable online scholarship search engines. So number one tip for these is to open up another email account so that when you start submitting all of your applications or you're receiving the various applications, it can go to one website, one email address, so that it doesn't clog up your personal primary email, because it can happen depending on how you set up your parameters to search for the different scholarships. They can almost spam or send all kinds of scholarships that may not pertain to you, or if it's not enough scholarships, you may need to go back online and again open up the parameters. You're from the East Bay, you're left-handed, right-handed, music, loves baseball. So those kinds of things are the types of scholarships that are out there. Some have early deadlines, sooner rather than later. Some have rolling deadlines. So again, looking at these different search engines, you can find all kinds of scholarships that are available for you. So that is what we have to discuss, just the basics about financial aid. And I think, Ms. Wright, we have some questions. Let's see. I think I have some questions that came through already. Should students fill out FAFSA or apply for financial aid, even if your parents are Bill Gates? So in order for a parent to use the Federal Parent Plus loan, you still have to do the FAFSA. So the definition of making too much will be different for every family. So for the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, again, those are free to complete. So I would always suggest completing them even just for the first year to see what can happen. Again, even if you don't qualify for the first time or at the beginning of the fall semester, should something happen during that academic year, the financial aid office can still do special circumstances and make exceptions to either application to, retroactively make the student eligible for other financial aid for any need-based awards. Let's see. Can we get assistance in filling out financial aid applications? In years past, there used to be Cash for College events where financial aid administrators and volunteers would sit with families at the computer, in the labs to help complete the applications. Unfortunately, we may not be able to do that this year, but again, calling either the federal student aid through the U.S. Department of Education and asking them if you have questions about the free application, or the California Student Aid Commission for answers on, or when you have questions for the DREAM Act application. Again, for the CSS profile, you would need to contact the schools that require the CSS profile for those questions and answers. Does having a 529 plan hurt the chances of a scholarship? If so, what do you suggest to people who have invested some money in the plan already? So again, the 529 was a savings plan that you are using to help your students with their expenses. So again, you will be doing the FAFSA every year, and that 529 may change every year because you will be using the funds for the student. You will again report all that information of the current assets, the cash checking account, savings account, in the cash question. And then on the investments, we'll include 529s, again, rental property, any CDs, stocks, bonds. Let's see. Is the EFC, the expected family contribution number, on the student SAR, the student aid report, for one student or for family with multiple students in college at the same time? So for example, twins. So each FAFSA, each California DREAM Act application is tied to each student. So the student's FAFSA, again, is tied to the student's social security number. So if one twin was working and the other twin did not work, their FAFSAs may look different. Their EFC will look different, even though the parent income and asset will be the same. Okay, let's see. If your student is applying to more than 10 schools, so on the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, online, you can list the 10 colleges to receive that information. Once the FAFSA has been processed, it typically takes about 3 to 5 days, and then the student aid report will be emailed to either the student or the email that's provided. It's been processed. The schools can look at the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application. I cannot guarantee that we will be able to look at them when you submit it today. We can't look at it next week on our databases because we're not quite there yet with updating our databases. So you will submit the FAFSA with your first 10 colleges or the DREAM Act application. You will wait for the student aid report that will be processed within the 3 to 5 days. You will log back onto either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application. You will delete those 10 schools and add your next 10 schools. Submit that again. If you have more than 30 schools, then you would do that same process. Wait till it's completed. You receive the student aid report, and then you delete the 10 schools and add the next 10. All righty, let's see. Please review identity theft concerns for parents and students looking for financial aid, scholarships, grants, etc. What is safe and what is not? Good question. Again, looking for reputable online search engines such as fastweb.com or scholarships.com or myscholarly.com. If you also look in the Fund Your Future brochure, the PDF, there's also some other scholarship search engines there that are reputable. You do not need to pay anyone to do scholarships applications for you, because they can always say, or financial aid, yes, you got a loan, that's financial aid, we did our job. Not necessarily so. And opening up another email account, again, so that they don't get to your other email, is always another a way to prevent any of those identity theft. Again, never ever on any scholarship go ahead and give them your social security number, mother's maiden name, birth date. Again, those are, or any credit cards. Again, those can not always, can be considered scams and are looking to steal your identity, the students or the parents. Okay. How should I enter my spouse's income if he is not paying U.S. tax? So again, it's on the FAFSA, or the Dream Act application, it is adjusted gross income for either a married couple. So even if one parent isn't required to submit a separate income tax return, it is still a joint. So if one parent has wages, that is listed there, and then using either, again, the W-2, or if it's a 1099, that information is listed on the FAFSA and is reported. Okay. My daughter's in college and we have a FAFSA account for her. Can I use that account and add my son? Again, the applications, especially the FAFSA, is tied to the student's social security number. So each student will have their own FSA, Federal Student Aid login and password for the FAFSA. The parent will be able to use their same FSA ID and password for both students. You can also have the ability at the end of submitting the first FAFSA, it will ask you, do you want to transfer the same information to another child's student's FAFSA? So that is possible there. Okay. Will there be less financial assistance given to students due to the pandemic? The most common answer you will get from any financial aid officer will be 2 words. It depends. Okay. Depends on the school. Some schools have been very fortunate to ask their donors and alums to, again, donate towards the scholarships, again, for students that are able or not able to attend school without that assistance. You have heard a lot of, or you may have heard stories of schools that are closing because of the pandemic. So you may need to, again, check those schools, check the websites, contact someone. Even if they don't pick up the phone right away, they still can return messages and or emails. Okay. Let's see, is there one place where we could go and submit for financial aid? Again, the FAFSA. If the student is applying to, or the DREAM Act application, if the student is applying to more than one UC campus or more than one CSU campus, you will need to list those schools individually on the FAFSA. So each school, each campus will need to receive that information from the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application. Okay. Differences in aid, public versus private schools, they all have financial aid. They all have scholarships and grants. They will offer loans, either federal. Students can use private as well. It will depend on the school itself and what they have to offer. You will see the differences in tuition and fees, as we showed earlier in the presentation, the average costs. When I started doing financial aid in 2000, I was at St. Mary's College of California, and then the tuition there was $19,000. It is currently just tuition hovering about $50,000. So that does not include room and board. It doesn't include the indirect costs of books and supplies or transportation costs. Okay. Let's see. How can a parent update financial situation changes, for example, changes in employment, income after a loan or grant has been offered? Again, that can happen anytime before the student starts school or even during the time during when the student is already registered and attending classes. So you can always send cookies and chocolates to the financial aid office while you are discussing the different changes. I'm kidding, really, we don't need that. Need, want, two separate things. But again, always contact the financial aid office with any question. We are talking about money. We're talking about your student's future. So please, anytime you have a question, contact them, send them an email. Email is definitely preferred because then you will get an answer in writing.
All right. That may be about all the questions we have. Thank you. Okay, let's see, how do I do that? No, we should both be on this. There. All right, so thank you so much for coming and really appreciate your time. Lots of good questions tonight, and we hope that you'll come back again next year and share this all over again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. If you have other questions, I know in the past they've been able to contact you. Is that still okay?
Absolutely. They will just send those questions to you and you know where to find me, Ms. Wright.
All right. Well, we'll do it. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great night.
Have a good evening.
See you later. Bye.